And let's listen to an opening song by Dr. Will Tuttle.
Thank you, Dr. Patty. Yeah, I'd like to play a piece now, original piano music, that's called Dance for the Arctic Moon, and it's devoted to the sacred feminine dimension of consciousness within all of us, the capacity that we have to connect with our inner guidance system. So I'd like to dedicate this music to the healing of all of our relations and just the creating and encouraging the field of energy that's here already for peace and healing in our world. So this is Dance for the Arctic Moon. Feel free to let the music take you on an inner journey. Enjoy. Thank you.
Drum roll. Please welcome Will Tuttle.
Let's begin with a meditation together. So let's get comfortable for that. Let's become aware of our breathing. Breathing together. And with every exhalation, allowing ourselves to let go of any thoughts of the past or the future. And entering more deeply into the heart of this present moment. The only holy moment is right now. And we give thanks for this beautiful morning, beginning of spring, of a new season of growth, abundance and creativity, joy and freedom. We give thanks for this beautiful Unity Center here on the Eastside. Give thanks for everyone who helps make this center possible, the sacred sanctuary. And we know that this sanctuary is a manifestation of the inner sanctuary, we all dwell in unity with the infinite love that is the source of all life. And we give thanks, knowing that what we are is the infinite eternal consciousness that is never born and never dies. Give thanks for all of our teachers and for all of the teachings of all the wisdom traditions of planet Earth. We give thanks also for the infinite web of life here and for the beauty of this earth, for all of the animals celebrating their lives, for the whole human family on our adventure of awakening to the truth that we are. We give thanks for the rivers and oceans, the mountains and forests, and we give thanks knowing that the light that shines at the heart of the universe is shining in our heart, in every cell of our being, cleansing and purifying, bringing every dimension of our life into alignment with the purpose that we are here to fulfill in this lifetime. So we just allow the music now to deepen our connection with the truth that we are. pure and infinite potential of all that is. So we give thanks to all of our loved ones for the unique and beautiful being that we are. We give thanks for the infinite love that is the source of our life. And we allow our hearts to fill with the great compassion. May all beings be happy. May all beings be at peace and free. And may each one of us awaken to the original brightness of our minds and hearts. And may we together continue to work together to build a more enlightened society, a world that cares for everyone, a world that reflects the truth of the indwelling Christ, presence of truth and love, through the power and presence of the infinite spirit of truth. We give thanks, knowing this is so. And so it is. Thank you all for joining together in our meditation. And I'd like to play a short piece of original music before we go into the talk. This is a piece called Benediction of Light. We send a blessing out into our world together. Enjoy. Thank you. much on this beautiful morning, and Madeline and I are delighted to be back after many years. We were here twice. I looked it up to try to refresh my memory. We were here back in 2001. We lived for 17 years in an RV, a fifth-wheel trailer pulled around by our pickup trucks. We loved coming here because there was plenty of places to park here. And we were here again in 2006. And then a few years later, we got a house in Northern California, so we've been more on the West Coast, but it's great to come back here and be part of this community for a few days. And Madeline and I go to Unity churches a lot. We've been doing it now for over 35 years, and full-time, so I think at this point we've been to more Unity churches than any human in history. And we love Unity because it's really, I think, one of the healthiest spiritual movements in our society, because it's really based at a very fundamental level on the idea of inclusivity, which is really, and I love what we said this morning also in the daily word about wholeness. Those two really go together. And not only is everyone included and invited here, but also there's this openness to the wisdom traditions of all the world's religions. And I think this is a very healthy thing. There isn't this sort of narrow-minded idea that we have the one right answer. Like I was taught that when I was growing up. We have the one right religion, and we get to go to heaven. It's just for us, because we believe. But there's this idea that the whole humanity is essentially one consciousness, and that we have created many different paths that awaken our awareness, and we can honor those and learn from them, each one of us in our own way. And Charles Fillmore is kind of famous for emphasizing this book. Both Charles and Myrtle, co-founders of Unity. And Charles said a number of times, he writes, each one of us should go straight to headquarters. Right? That idea, we don't need an intermediary. Each one of us should go straight to headquarters. And I always kind of smile when I think of that, because I think, gosh, he was a lucky guy. He could go straight to headquarters. That meant for him, I'll just ask Myrtle and see what she thinks. And I have the same advantage myself with Madeline. But the idea really, I'd like to get into, we'll talk about more this afternoon, is that we each have our own intuitive awareness, our inner guidance system that's connected to our spirituality, to our true nature. Our true nature is not a material object. We're not a corporeal thing, an object that was born and will die. But we are taught that. We're taught that over and over again by the medical establishment, by the educational system, by all the institutions in our society. They reinforce continually this idea that we're a thing, an object, and we have a certain name and age and health challenges of this and that, and this whole collection of memories and opinions and all these things that we identify with as the personal self. Person, actually I like that word person because it comes from the old word in Greek that means mask. Persona. Per means through, sona means sound. So you're speaking through a mask. And that's what the personality is. But what we are is essentially the transpersonal reality. And when we begin to quiet our mind, we can begin to actually get a feeling and an awareness for what this is. How many of you have a regular spiritual practice that you do on a daily basis? Anybody? Yeah? Good. I really encourage that, because without that, the cultural program that I've been talking about of materialism really gets its claws into us from the time we're little kids, and we think of ourselves as a thing. And when we do that, we create a lot of suffering, really, for ourselves and for others, because we look at each other in a rather shallow way as an object. And then we have our challenges here, so we have to get what we want, keep away what we don't want, try to accumulate more money, products, affection, relations, whatever it is, and keep away what we don't. So when we're all doing that, we have all kinds of conflict that's based on the delusion that we're separate. And so the spiritual path is really about recognizing that we are the infinite light that makes this possible. And when we get out of the box of awareness, we begin to realize that. My old Zen teacher used to teach, I think a kind of a nice symbol for that. He said, if you take a box, like a cardboard box, you put it out in the sun, and if you just have an ice pick or something, you made a bunch of little holes in the top. So if you're inside the box, you see all these little shafts of light. And so if you're one of those shafts of light, you'd think, oh, here I am. I'm a little bit better shaft of light than that one over there. I'm a little bigger, a little nicer. And so inside the box, you could all be arguing about which is the better shaft of light. He said, if you just get out of the box, and you'll realize you're all the sunshine, right? And that's the same thing for us. We're all the light that makes these individual appearances possible. It's like the fingers on my hand. If they were arguing, I couldn't play the piano, right? They're serving the higher force. And so it's really our challenge, I think. And the thing is, we're taught that we're this thing. It's kind of like, one of the main teachings in the Buddhist tradition as a symbol for the Buddhist teaching. There was the wheel, like the wheel of the Dharma, the teachings, the tree under which is considered a very powerful symbol. Another one was the footprint. I like the footprint because if you go to the beach and you're walking along in the sand and you see a footprint, you don't go up to the footprint and go, "Good morning, George. How are you doing today?" The footprint is just the footprint. It's not the being that made the footprint. So that's a very good symbol because this is a footprint waving. Right? You don't see the being. We can't see the being. The being that we are is non-corporeal. We are consciousness. And that can help liberate us, but also it can help connect us with our inner guidance system. Because as we go through our life, and every day we're doing something, we're being propelled. So we're being propelled either by the cultural program or by our inner guidance system, our intuition, our inner wisdom, which is connected to spirituality. And that takes practice. It takes actually practicing and the main practice really, I think, is quieting our mind. Because our mind, again, my old Zen teacher said, it's like when we start meditating, we realize that we have this appliance we didn't know we had before. It's a popcorn popping machine that pops up thoughts without stopping. You can't find the off switch, right? So our mind is continually thinking, and those thoughts drive our feelings and our actions and so forth. So if we can learn to become the space within which these thoughts are arising, then we begin to actually witness and watch and be aware, and then we're no longer driven so much. We can be much more free, actually, in how we live our lives. So we'll be talking about this afternoon. I'm noticing that I'm getting a little short of time, so I just want to close with maybe one more thought, a little bit longer thought, but it's kind of an interesting one, which is the idea that all of you who came through this door, you're here because you have a story, and you have questioned the official narratives in our society. Krishnamurti said this. He said, it's not a good idea to be well-adjusted to a profoundly sick society. Right? So, the whole idea is, we like to be well-adjusted, we like everybody to like us, but we begin to realize that we should create something a little more at a higher vibratory level. And that's really, I think, what unity is about. So if you're in here, you're questioning the official stories in our society, you're doing the inner work that's so important. When I was a little kid, I was born and raised in Concord, Massachusetts. And it was kind of a neat place to be born because it was a Revolutionary War in the 1700s that my father, we all used to celebrate April 19th, which is coming up as Patriots Day. We would celebrate the battle at the Old North Bridge in Concord. My father would get his Minutemen, get on his Minuteman outfit and take the gun off the wall, and we'd all celebrate the Revolution. But then in the 1800s, there was the Transcendentalist movement. So there was Emerson and Thoreau, and I learned to swim in Walden Pond and was born in Emerson Hospital and went to Olcott School. And these Transcendentalists were really the first ones to bring a lot of the teachings that were non-Western teachings, basically from India and China and other places, into our Western culture. And I think in many ways enriched our spiritual tradition with the idea, for example, from the Buddhist tradition, of God as an infinite mind, and that mind is actually our mind when we are open to it. Or the idea from the Taoist tradition of God as this infinite principle, a principle that we can understand and harmonize with, and when we do, our life will become in harmony. Or the idea from the Hindu tradition that God is equally female and male, and really opening to that understanding. So it's interesting to study Charles and Myrtle Fillmore because they were really very much involved with trying to understand these and propagate these teachings. And when I went away to college in Maine, I remember starting to read some of Emerson and Thoreau, and that led me actually to Walt Whitman and other books on Eastern religion and other things. And I found one book written a long time ago in the 1890s by a man named Richard Buck from Canada, And the name of the book was Cosmic Consciousness. And basically what he said was that a few people had attained a different state of consciousness. He said most people live in what he called self-consciousness, right? We care basically about ourselves. We're trying to protect ourselves and maybe our family or our tribe. But basically that's the self-consciousness level. But he said a few rare people had attained what he called cosmic consciousness. People like Jesus and the Buddha and many great sages and saints and mystics and poets and seers, both men and women, through the ages. And he gave examples of them and their teachings and their writings. And he said these people had attained moral elevation and intellectual illumination and loss of the fear of death. And they basically lived their lives to bless others. Instead of living their life to try to accumulate and get, they lived their life to give and be kind and loving. And they understood a deeper wisdom. And he said that it is the destiny of every human being to attain cosmic consciousness. That that's really our purpose here. And so I remember reading this and thinking about my life and how I was basically groomed to take over my father's newspaper business, which was really booming. He had 13 newspapers, and I was the oldest child. And so I remember going back home on the breaks from college and saying to my parents, Mom, Dad, you know about cosmic consciousness, right? We're not just here to try to make money and do all these busy things we're always doing. We're here to go to a higher level. And I remember my father saying, well, I'm not sure how that's going to help you get ahead in the world. This education is costing me quite a lot of money, actually. But it was kind of neat. But they somewhat understood because my mother was an artist. My father actually taught me to play the piano. But my younger brother, Ed, to my delight, he said, yes, let's do it. Let's attain cosmic consciousness. So we both got really excited about this. And we said, okay. So as soon as I graduated from Colby, we told our parents that we're going to attain cosmic consciousness now. And my father said, okay, so what are you going to do? I remember we thought, what do we do? And then we thought about it, and then we knew exactly what to do. It's so easy when you think about it. There's one sure way. We'll go to California. So, it was 1975, and we thought, all right, so here we go. So I remember heading down the driveway with some fresh baked cookies from my mother, little backpacks, and we worked our way west. And after about maybe 3 or 4 weeks, we'd gotten as far as Buffalo. And it was freezing. It was October, and I thought, I can figure this out. We better forget that and head south. So we started just walking south on these little tiny backcountry roads down through upstate New York and into Pennsylvania, and about 15 or 20 miles a day we would walk and down into West Virginia. And then when we got into West Virginia, I remember the first little town, they said, boys, you're in the Bible Belt. And I didn't know what that meant, but I found out. And we worked our way down all the way through West Virginia into Kentucky, across eastern Kentucky through Appalachia. We had all kinds of very interesting experiences because we had no money. We did the whole thing with no money. We thought we'd walk like the ancient sages of India, sadhus just meditating, and somehow we'd be taken care of. And we were. It was quite an incredible thing how it worked. But we got into Tennessee eventually, and when we got just south of Nashville, we heard about a community called The Farm. And The Farm in 1975 was the largest hippie commune in the world, and they were pretty much all from California. So we felt like it was very poetic. We kind of met them there. And they were all vegetarians, actually, and I've never eaten meat in my life since that day, 1975. That fellow told me about why they were, and I heard many years later that Madeline, the same month and year in Switzerland, also decided to never eat meat again in her life. And eventually, my brother and I walked farther south all the way down into Alabama and ended up in a Zen center in Alabama, I believe in Huntsville, actually. You probably think I'm lying, but there was a Zen center there. And eventually I got out to California a few years later. I was living in different meditation centers, Tibetan Buddhist and Zen, and I was studying. And I decided eventually to shave my head and become a Zen Buddhist monk in South Korea, doing a lot of meditation. Really, I took a vow of silence for 90 days and really did a lot of deep meditation. But I remember when I came back eventually to the United States, got my PhD at Berkeley, and I had heard about unity. When I was just in my early 20s, I'd heard about it, and I had gone to some of the church services, and I realized that this unity movement is absolutely enormously precious. I mean, it really contains the full wisdom and depth of the spiritual teachings in a way that is empowering and accessible for us as Americans, really. I mean, for everyone, but I think it's especially created, of course, by Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, with an eye toward healing and toward peace and harmony, and without any blame or judgment, but just encouraging us to awaken out of these delusions that cause so much suffering in the world, and to be a force for that. So these are the two great, I think, efforts that we can make in our life. One is to do the inner work, to unfold this light, to do the inner listening, and to do our best to live a life of kindness and compassion for all expressions of life, and to connect with our inner guidance system, our inner wisdom. There's no greater gift, I think, we can give the world than to connect with our inner guidance system, so we're not just being a program, but we're actually being guided by our own inner wisdom. We become then an example for that, for others. And it's very inspiring, and it helps others to see, wow, you're doing that, I'm going to try something, without trying to change other people. We just bring out the best in each other. And so that leads into the second effort, which is to then create communities of sanity, communities that reflect this teaching. It's a lot of work to build a community that supports the teaching, but it's a great thing to do when we come to this earth, to try to reinforce and build a community of teachings. In the Buddhist tradition, there are what are called the three jewels, or the three treasures, like the most essential, precious aspects. And it's the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So the Buddha basically is our own true nature, what we would call in unity the Christ, the eternal aspect of ourselves. That's Buddha. Dharma is the teachings that help us to awaken and unfold the inner Christ, the Buddha. So that's the teaching, is the Dharma. And the Sangha is the community of people who are interested, who are drawn to awaken the higher potential. And the Buddha said something quite interesting. He said, without the Sangha, there will be no Buddha and no Dharma. So the Sangha is the precious jewel of the community. So I just want to close by thanking all of you for the efforts you're making, not only for the inner work you're doing, but also the efforts to keep this community healthy and active and strong, because the most important thing, really, is that these ancient wisdom teachings don't die out from generation to generation. There are tremendous forces in the world attacking them, to enslave humanity, to delusion, to fear, to disease, to misunderstanding. And so the deep power of the insight of Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, tapping into this field of wisdom that is here, it's not enough that it just be, like we said, for the fourth aspect of the Four Unity teachings. It's not enough to just read about it. We need to practice meditation and affirmative prayer, and understand and embody these teachings in our lives. And I really feel that you folks are doing that. So I want to thank you for your efforts. No effort we ever make is ever lost. So keep doing the work you're doing, and go forth and multiply the message. And I'll go ahead and stop here because it's time to wrap it up. But thank you all again for your efforts. Bless you all. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Use this mic. So I want to just kind of say that I appreciate your talk, Will, because for me it still resonates of what unity is all about. And I think that somewhere along the line, communities have forgotten that. And there's an effort to bring the movement back to where we need to be. And that was the one thing that brought me to unity, is that we were not an elitist group. We didn't exclude people. We were inclusive, and all are welcome. And whatever you bring to the table, we love you, we bless you, and we appreciate you. So at this time, I invite you to take your gifts that you'd like to share with Unity Eastside. And let's bless our gifts by singing our offertory. I give as I receive. I receive as I give. Joyously, lovingly, aware of God as the source of all my good.
As the baskets go around, I'll just play a short piece. This is called End of Dreams. Enjoy.